¿Qué pasa, YouTube? What's up, everybody? Happy for you guys today. Another Ultra Sun and Moon video related video. I don't know why I said video twice, but I'm so excited about this, man. So yesterday I uploaded about the Move Tutor moves, and after going through the list a little bit deeper and seeing some of you guys comment about exactly like some cool mons that also got buffs, I decided to make this little video right here just talking about like a handful of Pokemon that I think are going to be absolutely amazing. Or, well, these Pokemon are really good most of the time, but they're just going to be slightly or just above average better than they already were. I can't English because I'm trying to like get all this out so I can dive right into the video. So if you guys do enjoy this, hammer arm that like button down below. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about these specific Move Tutor moves, or if you guys haven't seen the list, I'll try to leave a link of the list down in the description, and you guys can still comment about like what you think specifically could be like so much better because of just one move or two moves or whatever they learn. So I'm not going to just be talking about Defog. I want to get that out of the way because there are going to be a couple Defog mons on here, so I'm going to just try and go through them real quickly. But I'm also going to be talking about how these Pokemon could potentially be in Draft League format. I have been enjoying Draft League format a lot lately, and I still play Smogon singles and all that stuff. So yeah, I'll be trying to cover both of the spectrums. So if I say anything wrong, or maybe some information is wrong, by all means correct me in the comment section below. So yeah, first off, as you guys can see here, we have, I think, three very interesting Defog Pokemon. First off, Landorus Therian. I personally don't think that Landorus having Defog has made it really all that better. Like, I saw some people like commenting that Landorus was like possibly broken, that Landorus should be banned, but personally I don't think Landorus in a sense would be the best defogger in OU now with all these new Pokemon that got access to defog. Like, I want to say maybe 15, almost like 20 new Pokemon got access to defog, which is absurd. But yeah, like, I don't think Landorus essentially would be like the best defogger. A defensive Landorus with defog and leftovers could still be kind of cool. Just Stealth Rock's Landorus in general is still pretty decent. Z-move Landorus is still absurdly amazing. But the thing about it is, I guess you would still in a sense have to run Stealth Rocks on Landorus if anything, because not too many new Pokemon got access to Stealth Rocks. But Defog is mainly what I want to talk about here. Sorry about the stutter. But just, Draft League. Draft League, I think, is where Defog Landorus, and in a sense Tornadus Therian too, like these two are kind of put together along with Tapu Koko in a sense as well. These three Pokemon, while mainly Landorus and Tapu Koko, I think that them having access to Defog may not be like the most amazing thing for OU in general. I think in Draft League is where Defog Landorus and Defog Tapu Koko are really going to be just phenomenal. The fact that so many new Pokemon got access to Defog, that means that now you have a Pokemon. So for example, in previous drafting, Landorus and Tapu Koko were not noted as hazard removal, which means you would have to try and get some other form of hazard removal. But now they have access to Defog. That makes them even more valuable than they already are. Landorus, Therian, and Tapu Koko arguably are like top 5, top 10 at least best Draft League Pokemon currently right now in Sun and Moon, and I stick by that because of just how good they are and how hard it is to really essentially prep for them. But with them now having access to a form of Defog, that just means that they fill a role that another Pokemon that you may have not initially wanted is fulfilled. So let's say you had Tapu Koko and you were like, oh, I want Gligar because I need Defog, but now you don't need Gligar because you have Tapu Koko with Defog. And that means that what would have been Gligar can now be another Pokemon that can just help out Tapu Koko in a sense. And then Regenerated Tornadus, like a bulky mon that can be so offensive as well, with great natural bulk and its own form of recovery every time it switches in and out without having to go for an initial move like Roost or something along those lines. Just sounds so amazing, man. Defog Tornadus, I think, could even maybe see some use in OU, honestly, but in Draft League is where I think these three mons are mainly going to shine. And the thing about Landorus having Defog is that now Gliscor gets access to Defog with Poison Heal. So I essentially think that Gliscor would be a much better Defogger if you're Landorus personally. And because Gliscor now gets defog with Poison Heal, that makes it so much better, because you're still going to be getting that 12% every turn. You could easily run Protect or just run Roost to be able to ensure that Gliscor sticks around for a long time, essentially. And even in Draft League, like a Poison Heal, Defog, Gliscor, and Immunity Gligar in general are still going to be so good. So moving on to the next little couple mons here. Now Florges is actually something that I didn't even realize had defog up until I was doing a little bit more research, but that's kind of cool. I don't want to touch too much on Florges because I don't really think it's going to be that much better with defog, but the fact that it gets defog is pretty cool. I'm pretty sure it was Florges. If I'm incorrect about this, feel free to correct me, but defog Florges could be kind of cool. I could see like maybe a Calm Mind defogging set, or just like a bulky defog set in general. Klefki. Now Klefki and Whimsicott kind of fit in the same aspect because they get Prankster, which means defog has a +1 priority, and this kind of inherently has given dark types a bit of a buff, because now dark types can be defog blockers when it comes to Prankster Klefki with defog, or Prankster Whimsicott with defog potentially. Although obviously they are fairy types, it still inherently has given them a bit of a buff if you feel like being aggressive and switching them in. Actually, the fact that Klefki gets defog in general is kind of odd to me, but I can still definitely see defog Klefki being run. Although I feel that from what I've used with Klefki, sorry, and what I've seen on teams, I always feel like it kind of has 4 move slot syndrome to an extent, because Prankster Thunderwave is always good, Prankster Spikes is good, even one of the 2 dual screens is always nice. You always want at least one offensive move, either it be Play Rough or Dazzling Gleam or Flash Cannon sometimes. I feel like Klefki does kind of have 4 move slot syndrome, so it'll be interesting to see if defog Klefki really picks up. That's one of the main mons that I'm interested to see how it'll go. But another really surprising defog mon is Serperior. Now the great thing about Serperior is that in theory it can beat so many stealth rockers on its own. Leaf Storm, defog, maybe synthesis, and like a hidden power, just to be able to hit whatever you need to hit with Serperior to be able to beat that potential stealth rocker, just makes Serperior infinitely better. And this could be like an easy anti-hazard Pokemon, essentially being able to beat down your opponent's Pokemon that set up hazards. And Serperior also gets access to taunt, so now with it having defog, you kind of have to play those mind games potentially on like, is it gonna defog away my hazards, is it gonna taunt me, or is it just gonna boost to try to manhandle through my team? Not to mention that it's still really fast, and it could still potentially be a solid late game sweeper with it still having defog, because you can have contrary and defog. So that I think is very interesting. I could definitely see Serperior potentially being used a lot more in OU and being more valued for sure in a draft league. So yeah, I think there's only one more defog mon that I'm really interested in, and that's Silvally. Now this, again, it's kind of like Florges. Like I don't think like Silvally is gonna be like, oh, it's gonna boost up right up to OU and be like tier 1 in draft. No, but I definitely think that with it having defog, it kind of makes it just a little bit more valuable, and definitely makes it more viable down in PU where it currently rests at, because now it's a hazard removal. It's a hazard removal with Parting Shot that can also help set up other Pokemon on your team. Silvally now has just slightly more value because of it having access to defog. If it had got Stealth Rocks, now if it got Stealth Rocks, that would be a totally different story. Like I still don't think it would rise above like NU, but it would make Silvally just so much better if it had got Stealth Rocks along with having access to defog. Like just those 2 moves alone would have made Silvally like 10 times better in draft league. Or if it got Recover somehow, that would have been amazing. So yeah, I touched on Gliscor. Obviously I feel like Gliscor and along with Gligar are going to be way better defog mons now, because they have access to their hidden abilities and defog in general. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Now something that actually one of my subscribers pointed out to me was Kommo-o. Kommo-o now gets access to all of the elemental punches along with Drain Punch. Actually, the fact that it just gets Fire Punch and Drain Punch alone, in my opinion, is really good. But because one of its new level up moves is Close Combat now, this thing is definitely going to be a lot better than it currently is right now. Kommo-o, it's kind of been in a weird spot. Like so many people expected so much about it, but the thing about Kommo-o is that it didn't really have good coverage moves in a sense. Like, its special move pool honestly is pretty decent because it gets flamethrower if anything, but you really couldn't use Dragon Dance sets to its fullest. Autotomize sets were, is it autotomize? Yeah, whichever one it gets to boost its speed by +2 were mainly specially offensive because again its physical moves were really not that good. Also, it gets stealth rocks now, so that's actually pretty cool. This just makes Kommo-o like 5 times better, I think, for draft league format. Even in draft league format, Kommo-o was kind of lackluster, but now it gets access to all these new physical moves and it gets access to all the new physical moves and access to stealth rocks. So that's actually pretty awesome if you ask me. Not to mention that its new Z move is absurd. Like, holy crap, that new Z move is insane. If I'm not mistaken, it's an Omni boosting Z move and it just gains +1 in all of its stats. So yeah, that's crazy. I definitely think Kommo-o is going to be used so much more. I can honestly see it being a solid UU Pokemon. I don't think it's going to run through OU honestly, but I can definitely see it go up to at least UU because of these new coverage moves. It has very decent bulk, and if its Z move is not banned, which I highly doubt is going to be banned in like regular Smogon, then this thing can definitely put in a lot of work. So moving on to some of the other interesting notable stuff here. This is a combination of 3 very interesting knockoff Pokemon here. So first off, Tapu Fini and Toxapex I did kind of touch on in my video from yesterday. Toxapex right now, if I'm not mistaken, is currently S ranked in the OU metagame. It's going to be interesting to see how it's going to be when Ultra Sun and Moon come out, but the fact that it just gets access to knockoff just gives Toxapex so much more utility, because this just makes it even more annoying than it already is. Oh, hey, I have to worry about being burned on the switch in by Scald, but now I have to worry about losing my item potentially. That's not very good to have to deal with. Like, even if knockoff is possibly not even going to be that common on, well, I would assume it's going to be common on Toxapex because of just how Toxapex is. It's literally just the wall. It kind of sits there, it gets up T-Spike sometimes, it'll toxic a couple things, and it just kind of spreads Scald Burn. So why would you not want to have something that just gets rid of items? And that's kind of where Tapu Fini is as well. Although Tapu Fini right now is really not that good in OU. Like, I've not seen a lot of Tapu Finis at all, but Tapu Fini, I think, is going to be a little bit more valuable now in Draft League, because now if it wants to run a bulky set, it can now have knockoff. Also, these 2 mons get access to Icy Wind, so that's pretty cool because they can put your opponents at -1 speed, and that's what I think is going to make them a little bit more valuable in a Draft League personally. Just Icy Wind and knockoff between these 2 Pokemon, I think, is going to make them just so much better, because now your opponent has to prep for you possibly having the Icy Wind, and then if something's at -1, you bring in something to revenge kill, or you can help something set up, and that just in itself sounds really amazing personally. And then Incineroar finally has a decent stab move and knockoff. Like, Darkest Lariat I guess was okay, but if this thing's hidden ability comes out with Intimidate, knockoff, U-turn, like, Incineroar could honestly be a really good Pokemon. All it needs now is for its hidden ability to be released. With Intimidate again and knockoff and U-turn, this thing could be such an amazing Assault Vest Pokemon just because of Intimidate. And then knockoff being stabbed is going to be doing pretty solid damage to whatever this thing is trying to hit. So these 3 I think are really going to prevail from knockoff. If I'm not mistaken, I think Passimian also got access to knockoff, and so did Kamala, which is kind of cool. Although I don't really care too much for those 2 mons, and I don't think knockoff is going to make them particularly any better. I definitely think that these 3 mons having knockoff are going to be really good. So moving on to the last couple mons here. Feraligatr and Kingler now, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, now have access to Sheer Force and Liquidation. Think about that, guys. That is kind of crazy. Now, Feraligatr already used to run Waterfall, but Liquidation is base 85 power with a 20% chance to lower defense. So that means that 5 extra base power alone is pretty significant. Like, 5 base power can definitely pick up some specific OHKOs or 2 KOs that something like Waterfall otherwise wouldn't be able to. And then, yeah, it gets Aqua Tail, but Aqua Tail doesn't get boosted by Sheer Force, as where Liquidation would be boosted by Sheer Force. So I really would love to see Feraligatr maybe be used more in RU. I don't see it much right now in RU, but it is definitely a scary setup mon. But hopefully with it having Liquidation and just that extra little bit of power could maybe make Feraligatr a much more scary sweeper in the tier. And Kingler, finally Kingler gets a stab move that it can abuse with Sheer Force, guys. Literally, like, this thing got no stab move to abuse with its Sheer Force ability. The best move it could use was Crab Hammer, which is not even affected by Sheer Force because I don't think high crit ratio isn't taken into consideration. But now that it gets Liquidation, Agility Kingler actually just seems so much fun, dude. I really want to use Agility Sheer Force Liquidation Kingler in the lower tiers when it gets access to the move, and hopefully it does get Sheer Force and Liquidation, because that would be amazing. And I really think like Kingler could maybe even shoot up to being viable in NU. RU, no, but NU possibly for sure. And the last mon I want to touch on is Lurantis here, which gets access now to Superpower and Knockoff, coming off of a base 105 physical attack. That's actually really amazing. Like, let's take a look at Serperior real quick. Serperior only has a base 75 special attack stat, but Lurantis, with a base 80 special attack and a base 105 physical attack, can hit a little bit harder. Now, obviously, Lurantis is just not really that good of a Pokemon because it's insanely slow, and I don't think that Lurantis would rise above NU if it really came down to it. But the fact that it can now have Superpower is actually kind of interesting because it can take advantage of that base 105 physical attack, not to mention that it does kind of have some pretty decent bulk. Base 70 HP and base 90 SPDEF is pretty solid if you ask me for the lower tiers. So like a bulky SPDEF set with Superpower and like Leaf Blade with Synthesis and Knockoff, that sounds terrifying. This thing could actually become very viable in even more viable, I should say, in PU, and potentially even more popular in NU, depending on how things go. So yeah, guys, that is just kind of what I wanted to touch on. These, in my opinion, are some of the most interesting new Pokemon that get access to these new specific Move Tutor moves. If you guys have any ones you would like to comment about, or if you have any comments about these Pokemon in general, let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, I will see you all tomorrow. So thank you guys for watching. Ultra Sun and Moon is so close, guys. We're like less or almost a week away, and just, oh, it's gonna be so great, man. I can't wait to battle. So yeah, later, guys.